When you say yes to something, you're going to have to say no to something else or someone else. That's a lesson I learned years ago, and it is one of those facts of life. When you say yes to something, you're going to have to say no to something else. And that is what we're going to talk about today. I'm titling today's discussion Index Cards. And you'll understand why, but you're going to need an index card to keep your priorities straight. Hi, I'm Sam Hunter. This is 721 Live, the video arm of 721 Ministries. I'm glad you're with us. Thank you for joining us. You know, we spent the last 3 podcasts talking about the A+Life, the life that is truly life, the life to the full that Jesus wants for us. Well, you'll never have that if you are not living out your priorities. It's just that simple. And so today I want to help you think about those priorities. What's most important? Are you really living that way? And what little changes might you make if that were true? I'm going to start off with 3 quotations that I think help us frame what it is we want to talk about. So, well, first, this is Andy Stanley from years ago, is where you're going, where you want to be when you get there. Is where you're going, where you want to be when you get there. The next one is really kind of funny. You hire a consultant, he comes in, he checks out your business, he spends a week looking at it, and he comes back and he says, your system is perfectly designed to render the results you're now getting. And then my favorite guiding principle is saying yes to anything means saying no to something or someone else. Now, I just want to take a minute and set this up. Is where you're going where you want to be when you get there? Now, you might tend to think that means when I'm 80 or I'm 85 or I'm looking at death. But it really means, depending on your age, when you hit 30, when you hit 40, when you hit 50, when you hit 60, when you hit 70, when you hit 80, is where you're going. Because, see, your direction, not your intention, is what leads you to your destination. It's your direction that you're going now. So we want to ask ourselves, look, I'm on this path, and is where I'm going where I want to be when I get there? Because it's going to get here really quickly. If you're young, 30 is going to get here. If you're a little older, 40, 50, 60. I'm coming in on 69, and we had a family reunion. My parents are no longer living, but we had a family reunion. I have 3 sisters, and all our children and our grandchildren were there. We had a little wet slide set up out in the front yard, and I was pushing my 3-year-old granddaughter Annie down that slide, and I had this sudden, vivid thought, this ought to be Britain, my daughter. What happened to 36 years? Well, how could this be my granddaughter? It's a blink of the eye that I was pushing my little 3-year-old daughter down. And I know that sounds like something we hear all the time, but it's just a fact. Is where you're going, where you want to be when you get there. And your current system is perfectly designed to render the results you're getting. And I want to talk to you today about changing those results, changing your direction so that when you do get there, it'll be where you wanted to go. It will not just be, you'll not look back and say, I missed it. I didn't live out what I wanted to live out. So I got some questions for you that I think are worth asking. And the first question is, where have you recently said yes that you now regret? You signed on to a committee. You signed on to a board. You agreed to take on coaching or doing something that you now think, I wish I hadn't have done that. This is taking up more time, or it's really getting in the way. I have to think through this. I get asked all the time to do things that are ministry related. But I have to ask myself, is this part of what I'm called to do? Because I'm called to men's ministry. And I know I heard from the Lord, and I mean this. I heard from the Lord a long time ago, Sam, you can do podcasts. You can do the radio show that you did for 15 years. You can write books. You can do all these things, but you cannot let that get in the way of men's ministry. So if I say yes to something, how many times have we done that? We've said yes out of ego or eagerness, or we wanted to be liked, or we thought it might be a good idea and we didn't think through, and now we regret it. Number 2, what activities are you involved in that are perhaps good, but not the best And here's the ... for this time in your life. And number 3, what activities are you involved in that someone else could be doing at this time in your life? Those are questions I want you to ask yourself because they ring true. Years ago, I was talking to a friend who was complaining about the time that he'd spent the night before in a architecture review board meeting for his subdivision. And I looked at him with 2 young children at home, working a full-time job, married. I said, what are you doing on the architectural review board? Well, somebody else can do that, or you can do it later, but have you lost your mind to be doing that? Where have you recently said yes that you now regret? What activities are you involved in that are perhaps good? We're not talking about robbing banks, but not the best for this time in your life. And what could someone else be doing? You see, you don't want to go through life and look back and say, I just missed the things that I really were a priority, but I didn't live them out as a priority. Solomon. We assume Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. Let's look at what he had to say about looking back over his life. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, he had done a lot. He had achieved a lot. Everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. That's what Solomon said looking back over his life. I built buildings. I created armies. I did lots and lots of things, but it was all meaningless. Jesus said, what good will it be to gain the whole world but lose your soul? What good would it be to gain all the committees and all the busyness and all the activities but lose what's most important in life? You know, doing 721 ministries now, men's ministry for Christian men's ministry for all these years, 20-something years, I rarely am confronted with atheism. It's typically activities. It's not atheists, it's activities. It's too many things getting in the way. Too many of the things that are good, but not the best. I want to show you this next one. And I've got at the top, legacy versus inheritance, because legacy is what you leave for someone. Inheritance is what you leave, Inheritance is what you leave for someone. Legacy is what you leave in someone. Inheritance is what you leave for someone. Legacy is what you leave in someone. The Belle of Beaufort. Jeff Smith, who is the rector, Jeff Miller, down in Charleston at St. Philip's, was telling us that his previous church down in Beaufort, when he first arrived there, he was walking through the graveyard, and he saw a headstone that said, the Belle of Beaufort. And he said, this must have been one heck of a lady that they would put on her headstone, or even she would want to be put on her headstone, the Belle of Beaufort. And her lifespan had not been that long ago, and so he started asking around the congregation, and nobody remembered the Belle of Beaufort. She wasn't apparently the Belle of Beaufort for very long. She had maybe an inheritance, but no legacy. And then I was reading through it's called a Jewish literacy. It goes through the entire biblical history of the Jews. And of course, Solomon is a big figure in that. And we just read what Solomon had to say, but in that book, they quoted a man named Leonard Woolf. Now, Leonard Woolf is a British Jewish man, and let me just read you a couple of the things about his life. He lived from 1880 to 1969. He was a British political theorist, author, publisher, and civil servant. He was a member of the Labour Party and the Fabian Society. He was an avid publisher of his own work and his wife's novels. He created 19 individual works, 6 biographies. He was a busy man. He did a lot of things. It looks to me like he accomplished a lot of things. Like Solomon, listen to his own words. The British Jewish writer Leonard Woolf once expressed a strikingly similar statement to Solomon. Looking back at the age of 88, I see clearly that I achieved practically nothing. The world today and the history of the human anthill during the last 57 years would be exactly the same if I had played ping pong instead of sitting on committees and writing books and memoranda. Oh my. The human anthill would be exactly the same if I had played ping pong instead of sitting on committees and writing books and memoranda. My friend, we cannot let that be our observation looking back over our lives. And how are we going to avoid that? Index cards. We're going to need index cards. You're going to need an index card to help you keep straight what's most important in life. And I brought my own index card. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but on this I have listed my top priorities. And what I do with this, and I keep it with me. I keep it in my day timer. If someone asks me to do something, I will look at this and see if it's on my list of priorities. So, for instance, my previous index card, I had Britton, my daughter, 721 Ministries, Body, Mind, and Spirit, my parents who were still alive at the time, and one-on-ones meetings with men. I've been married now. This is pre-Dina. Been married now for 10 years. What would I put at the top of my list now on my index card? Well, you might say, well, now you should clearly put Dina at the top. But you might say you should put God at the top. Well, I have decided, if you'll notice, I went my previous index card. It was Britton, my daughter, 721 Ministries. That would be my form of work. Body, mind, and spirit. Now that includes my relationship with Jesus and my Heavenly Father. So as I made my new index card, I realized I need to put body, mind, and spirit right up there with my wife. Because if I'm not taking care of my body and my mind and my spiritual journey with Jesus, I'm not going to be the best for Dina. And I'm not going to be the best for my children or my grandchildren. So my new index card has body, mind, and spirit dash Dina. They're at the top, 1 and 1A, or 1 and 1. Then children, then 721 Ministries, which is my profession, and then one-on-one meetings with men. Now, there'll be other things that'll come up, but these are my top, and I cannot let things get in the way of this. If I say yes to a speaking engagement, I better be thinking about what I'm going to have to say no to. I probably am going to have to say no to exercising or eating right or getting the proper amount of rest or being able to spend time with Dina or my children or my grandchildren. I want you to think about that. Now, I'm not saying you never say yes to something. I'm saying you think about it before you do it. One of the men in our meetings raised his hand just today, as a matter of fact, and he said, I'm involved with Kairos. It's a prison ministry. I've been involved with it for 2 or 3 years now, and at our last session, one of the top guys looked at me and he said, we have our eyes on you, and we want you to become a director. Now, think about his ego when someone says, we have our eyes on you. That puffs you up a little bit. Somebody will approach you and say, I just came out of a meeting and your name came up, and we'd like for you to. Now, my friend had the wherewithal, the presence of mind to say, I cannot do that right now. I've got a full-time business, 2 children, my wife and 2 children. I cannot do it right now. He headed it off at the pass. He might as well have looked at an index card and said, that is a really good thing, and I want to do that at some point, but not right now. I'm encouraging you to get an index card and write down what's most important. So list your top 3 to 5 priorities. And take this seriously. You may say, well, okay, it's God, it's work. It's God, it's family, it's work. Well, that's too vague. Be more specific. But after you've made your list, ask yourself, am I really even close to living this out? Is the percentage of effort and thought and heart that I'm putting into, does it really come close? Because let's just say you put God, family, and work, chances are you don't have the same focus that you would want to have on God or your family. Another man I was talking to whose wife divorced him, he said, I wanted to stand up in the meeting and say, don't let this happen to you. So men and women, as you listen today to what I'm talking about, think through what's most important. And then the next question, if you were actually living out your top priorities, what little things would you be doing now? Because you see, if we want things to be different, we have to do things differently. It sounds like a simple statement, but it's true. If we want things to be different, if I want to really live out my priorities so that when I'm 88, I'm not Leonard Wolf, what little things would I be doing? What little things would I be doing in my relationship with my Heavenly Father and with Jesus? I'd certainly be maybe the first 60 seconds of gratitude that we talk about before I even get out of bed. I'd spend my early morning time reading the scriptures and praying. I would bring Jesus into a conversational walk through life. I'd talk with him throughout the day. I'd think about him. I'd apply it. I mean, the little things. If my wife or my husband, well, we'll stay with mind and spirit first. I'd watch what I'm watching, because who and what you listen to influences what you think, say, and do. I'd watch what I'm watching. I'd watch my spiritual life. My body, mind, and spirit. I'd be getting my rest. I'd be getting my exercise. I'd be getting the proper amount of sleep. I'd be eating correctly. These are the things I'd be doing. Have you ever been in a bad mood because you didn't sleep well, or maybe you stayed up late, or you drank an extra glass of wine, or you're just hungry, or you're tired and you snapped at your spouse? Has that ever happened? Or your children? Of course it has. What little things would you be doing, body, mind, and spirit, with your wife or with your husband? Would you be calling them to tell them you love them, or leaving little notes for them? What little things would you be doing if they really were a priority in your life? Chances are you'd be saying no to things that are getting in the way of your being able to spend time with them. Quality time, slow down time. Same with our children. What little things would we be doing? Would you call your daughter or your son, no matter what age they are, and just say, hey, I was just thinking about you and I'm proud of you? Not because you did anything, but I'm just proud of you. I just think you're great. I'm so lucky to have you as my son or my daughter. These are the little things that we do if we really wanted to live out our priorities. Now, in closing, I know this is sort of a short message, but I just want to drive home that if we want the A+Life, the life that is truly life, the life to the full, we're going to have to be purposeful. We're going to want to be purposeful. We're going to want to prioritize the things that really are important. And say yes to some things, but think it through first before you do. And I can almost assure you your body, mind, and spirit is suffering because you've said yes to too many things. I don't even have to know you to guess that. And then the last thing, which is homework. Ask your children. This could be any age children. Children in the house, children who've grown. What does dad or mom like doing the most? Just ask them that. I was going to say, ask them, where does daddy or mommy spend most of his or her time? But I decided the better question to ask first is, what does dad or mom like doing the most? And some answers you might get would be work, family. You hope it's family. You hope it's not TV, sports, hopefully reading his or her Bible, golf, hunting, fishing. Any answer, if you ask your children, what does dad or mom like doing the most? Any answer short of spending time with us, or spending time with mom, or spending time with dad, spending time with our family, any answer short of that's a failure. I mean, it just is. It's okay to enjoy all these other things, but if your children or your spouse would say, what you really like doing the most is, and it's anything other than family or spending time with prayer or reading your Bible, it's not, you're not living out your priorities. So I say all this to say, it's the fall. We're starting a new school year. People are getting kind of cranked back up. The air's changing. The temperature's getting more bearable. What will you do to live out your priorities? And do you know why I'm pressing on this? Because there's so much more. You know it. You know it. Come, follow Jesus and find it.